Hey everyone, Keith here. I have a quick favor to ask. If you like what you're hearing, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Even better, tell a friend about the podcast and encourage them to listen. In this episode, I talk with Meta about Cambodia. He grew up in the US, but you'll hear why I felt he was perfect for this episode during our conversation. It was very personal, and I really appreciate him being so open with me. You'll also hear us discuss his crew, Chicago Tribe, and I want to talk about them for a second. Chicago Tribe is a special crew to me because back in 2009, B-Boy Check It allowed me to snap one of his dance battles at Smart Bar in Chicago. That opened up a whole new community to me, the hip-hop dance community. Since that one event, I've snapped dozens of battles on 3 continents and have taken tens of thousands of photos of hip-hop dancers around the world. I'm forever grateful to Check It and appreciate the hell out of Chicago Tribe for being a pillar of the dance community and a crew full of great individuals. On that note, I hope you enjoy this conversation with Meta. Before we get into this discussion of Cambodia, I want to ask today's guest, Meta, to introduce himself. Meta, welcome to My Home is Special.
Hi, my name is Meta Jimran May. The name Jimran means elevate in Khmer. It's my dad's first name. There was a time when his whole family, they were going through a drought, a lot of bad luck. Nothing was really going well in that time period. And when my father was born, everything was starting to look better. The crops was growing, the pigs and all the animals on the farm was starting to look healthy again. Everything was starting to look good. The name Jimran means elevate. And when my dad was born, that was when everything was elevating, everything was getting better. And that's why my grandpa named my dad Jimran, which means elevate. And I'm Cambodian American, living in Illinois, also known as B-Boy Meta Mayhem from Chicago Tribe Dance Crew. In my day-to-day, right now, I'm trying to do my best to follow my dad's footsteps as a jeweler.
Can you talk a little bit more about why being a jeweler is important to you?
That was his job when he first arrived in America. He was just another line jeweler, another guy on the assembly line, cheap immigrant labor. And then, he worked his way up to become a master jeweler in that company and became a great asset. With his skill set, that was what kept our family fed. That was what kept the clothes on our backs, the food on the table, the roof over our head. Him and my mom, they worked at the same company and they worked real hard to get where we're at today. If it wasn't for him being a jeweler, we wouldn't be as wealthy as we are today. And I think about that a lot nowadays. The last thing I want to do is for my dad to pass away, God forbid, and his skill set would just be gone. That's why I'm, working on jewelry now, just so I can pass it on to the next generation and be like, hey, our family is where we're at now because, Grandpa worked his butt off when he was here as a jeweler. And I want to pass that skill set down to the next generation. I want the next generation to have all the skill sets of our past generations. And they can know that, hey, Grandpa was a jeweler. I can be a jeweler too. Dad was a B-boy. I can be a B-boy too. Or I just want the younger generation to know that, hey, our family, we worked hard to get where we're at, and we have a lot of skill sets to pass down to you guys for you guys to be successful.
We actually met through mutual friends, although I was going through my archive and realized that I snapped you as far back as 2017 at a battle. And you're a member of Chicago Tribe, which is a crew here in Chicago founded in 1994. Can you explain or describe for people what Chicago Tribe is and what it does and maybe get into a little of what it means to you?
Chicago Tribe started off as a DJ crew founded by DJ Sprite. We became a B-boy crew, and then there was a point where we were just a dance crew. People was house dancing, repping Chicago Tribe. At this point, I hate to put such a small label on my crew because we have so much dance talent. I just want to call it Chicago Tribe Dance Crew.
And one of the things that I know is that your crew becomes a little bit more like your family. And how do you think about that in the context of Chicago Tribe?
That's a good question because so many crews nowadays, they want to label themselves as family. And there's a big difference between crew and family. And the sooner you figure that out, the sooner these real bonds can actually start. And that's what Chicago Tribe have. We're even though we call ourselves Chicago Tribe Crew, Chicago Tribe Dance Crew, we really are a family. Just even though we're such a big crew, it's hard to be a family in such a big crew because when you think about it, when you have a big family, you're gonna have cousins that you're out of reach with. You're gonna have aunts and uncles that you don't talk to every day. I feel like that's a strong point of Chicago Tribe. With us being so big, we have so many people that you can reach out to, so many people you can vent to and talk to, whether it be strategizing for battles or even real life situation. Like, hey man, you always have someone to talk to in Chicago Tribe. And if you don't, then, it's a kind of a two-way street, so you have to put in and find someone to talk to and mentor someone. But then at the same time, there's always someone willing to mentor somebody. Those bond, what I'm saying, it doesn't happen overnight. And if you look at our crew, 99%, we've known each other our whole lives, whether it's from way back in the day or, just joining the crew and meeting somebody. But we always have somebody to connect with. And that's the best part of being in a big crew. You always have someone to connect with. I like to give a big shout out to my mentors that helped me from Chicago Tribe. Guys like Sneaks, Check It, Abyss, Beatnik, Tonto. Man, I can go on like listing all the OGs, man. But at the end of the day, I'm blessed, you know what I'm saying?
I know you grew up here, but when I asked you about the podcast, you quickly told me that you grew up in Chicago, but when you first visited Cambodia, the moment you got off the plane, you immediately felt like you were home. And I wanted to chat about why you felt that way. What was that experience like? What brought you home? And what were some of the things that you saw that made you feel like you were where you belonged?
As soon as I stepped foot off the airplane, as soon as my feet touched Cambodian soil, I just felt like I was home. I mean, that was how I felt. As far as visually, as soon as I got off that plane, I saw the people. But everybody looked different, but what I've noticed was that everybody was smiling. Everybody was genuinely happy because I guess it was in the airport where everybody's just happy to see, family members coming overseas.
Right.
But it was just that feeling and visually seeing people happy, that was one of the things that made me felt like I was at home. But then, like on the jumping into, the car ride home to my mom's village in Sihanoukville, just jumping in the car and driving from the airport to her village, the stuff that I was seeing, wild ox just roaming around and cows roaming around everywhere. And, people on motorcycles everywhere, the way they dressed, the way they greeted each other. And that was one of the things that caught me too, was, my parents has always told me to greet elders and family members with respect. And at first I thought they were just trying to get me to be a respectful person. But then when I was in Cambodia and everybody that was just normal. Everybody was just respectful. Everybody was just greeting each other with love and respect. So it all clicked to me. I was like, okay, this is why they instilled that in me, because, that's who I am. And then when I came to Cambodia, I was like, that's why, I act this way. My parents, raised me this way because I'm Cambodian and this is my home. So when I'm here, it's like, I just felt like I was home. I felt like I was with my people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you just fit right in. What was it like going to your mom's village for the first time? Did you meet relatives for the first time? Was it what you expected? Was it different?
The first time I went, I was, greeted with a lot of family members that I've never met my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like going to my mom's village, and meeting my family that I'd never seen for years, it felt nice. It was good. Because everybody was so welcoming and everybody was just smiling. I think it was just the energy that everybody gave off was just welcoming. And it wasn't just my family members either. It was the whole village. It's just the whole country pretty much. Right. While I was there. That's how I felt the whole time I was there.
Did you have a similar experience when you went to your dad's village?
Yeah, it was my dad's village was in Battambang, which is closer to Thai. and my mom's village is Sihanoukville, which is closer to Vietnam. I mean, the vibe was like that everywhere I went.
When you visited your dad's village for the first time, were there stories or memories that came up for you or the family that you'd want to share?
So, yeah, I want to share a story about my dad's side of the family in Bun Bong. While he was running from the Khmer Rouge, he always liked to share this story to let me know that, hey, you're blessed to be here. When his family was running through their village, when the Khmer Rouge came and they were shooting at the villagers, my dad said that he took my cousin, threw him on top of his shoulders, and they were running. And all he could hear is just gunshots and bullets just grazing right by him. He can hear it going passing through his ears, and they were just him and his whole family was just running. And there was a river that stopped them, so he had to run through this river. The whole family did, and he remembered like it being neck deep, and he was describing how bullets were just hitting the water, and you see the water splashing, hit him in the face, and my cousin was on top of him, and they made it through, and nobody was shot and killed, and he always tells me that all the time. He was like, "Hey man, we went through some shit, and we're lucky to be alive." And when I was in Battambang Bong, the whole time I was there, at Battambang Bong, I would see like a river or something. His story would come into my head.
So I assume your parents met in Cambodia. Were they together over there? Did they come over to the U.S. together?
A lot of stories they tell me was they met during the Khmer Rouge War. They were pretty much escaping together. They had to go through a lot of really bad moments. They have stories for days.
Did they join a community of Cambodians here in Chicago when they moved?
Yeah, after they fled the war in Cambodia and they came to America, my dad's whole family, they were here in Chicago on the north side. Yeah, there was a big Cambodian community that settled, that was pretty much placed in the ghetto, you can say, in the projects. So when they came here, the whole family was placed in the projects. And you're talking about one bedroom apartment with 6-7 family members cramped into one. And these projects just look like any other projects that you go to nowadays in Chicago, but it was just all filled with Cambodian refugees. That was their community. And that was how I remember growing up when I was young, just being surrounded by a whole bunch of Khmer folks everywhere, in this big project. Shout out to Albany Park. That was where we grew up. Albany Park Projects.
No doubt. Now, one of the things that you mentioned was the values that your parents instilled in you, and that was part of the culture. And just about everybody that we've had on the podcast has talked about the food from home as being something that was special to them and that they just can't get when they're away from home. I imagine that you grew up eating Cambodian food here in the States at home. Is the food something that you think of when you think of Cambodian culture and you think of the time you spent back in Cambodia?
Oh yeah, definitely the food. Yeah, I'm sure everybody always talks about the food. It does play a big part, especially, yeah, like you said, I grew up eating Cambodian food my whole life. And then when I was in Cambodia, I remember, my cousin would take me to go get katil, which is pretty much a Cambodian version of pho, every morning. We would wake up early. Man, you would hear the roosters crowing. And even if you want to sleep in, you ain't sleeping in. You better get up and do something at the crack of dawn. And that's what we did. We woke up in the crack of dawn. I helped my uncle feed the chickens, the roosters, and then when it was time to go eat, me and my cousin, I would jump on the scooter and, we'll ride to the local market. I believe it's called Ochana. We would cruise up over there, and I just remember like waking up, the smell of the morning dew, or jumping on that scooter with them, and the ground is still kind of damp, and you would start seeing ox, water buffaloes and cows just roaming free, just cruising through it, and then just seeing local villagers waving, saying hi. as you're cruising, and everybody's all alive in the morning too. Everybody's just cruising along with you. It felt like you're just a part of the village. You know what I mean? And when I got there, just like I said, everybody's all welcoming. And the deal tastes like what my mom made at home. So that made me feel like at home. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? As in like. But then when I came back to America, every time I have my mom bowl of katil, it makes me feels like I'm at home in Cambodia. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And is this one of those dishes that takes a long time to prepare and that the person preparing it has to invest a lot? Or is it something that is let me see what I have in the kitchen and whip something up real quick?
No, it's if you know how pho is, because pho is a more popular dish
Right.
that a lot of people know. So katil is just like pho. It takes hours for the soup to be prepared and such. It felt like every time I order a dish at any restaurant, I mean, like the way they talk about their dish and the way they present it out to you, it feels like a sense of so much pride within their cooking. The people are so accommodating. Because I remember, me being a vegetarian, I was asking them for no meat in my katil, and they're like, "Yeah, no worries, no problem. We'll put it to the side for you." Comparing that to America, sometimes you get the stink eye. They're like, "What?" But that was what I noticed in Cambodia. They were never hesitant at all to accommodate to your needs. And the way they address you, they call you, bong or own, which is a way of respect. It's kind of like saying sir or ma'am when you're at a restaurant in America. You would get that everywhere you go. Like most of the time, you will always meet the chef or whoever's cooking, and they would talk about how much it takes to go into a dish, and they will love to sit there and talk to you and let you know their process. Like Adil, the lady was telling me how long it took her and how she woke up early in the morning to get the broth going, and how she got her ingredients from her local farm, which is her farm. You know what I mean? She would literally go to the backyard and get her ingredients, all her fresh herbs and everything she grew, all the meat that she was even cooking, it was all hers. You know what I mean? And that was what I loved about Cambodia. Everything was truly organic because, in America, you see just the label organic, right? You don't see the organic farm. You don't see the organic
Right.
ingredients.
Right.
But when you're in Cambodia, you see all of that. When they don't even label it as organic because it's just a way of living. Everything's organic.
Right.
In the countryside at least.
Right. They just went out back and got it. You just saw them pull it
Yeah,
out of the ground.
Yep.
So, Meta, there's two areas that you mentioned when we talked earlier that were special to you and to your family. One was a bridge that you saw when you were home, and the other was a prison. And maybe we can talk about the two of those things, which I realize represent maybe more difficult chapters in your family history. But why don't we start with the bridge? Because you saw this bridge when you went home that was more significant than you might have imagined when you first saw it.
That's something that I'm still trying to vision in my head because being second generation here in America, every second generation kid or person, Cambodian at least, hears stories about their parents all the time. We get it every time. When you mess up something, you're gonna hear a story. When you forget to make some rice for your parents, and you're gonna hear a story. But one of the stories that stuck out to me the most that it's still very hard for me to grasp too. When I was there and we drove across this concrete bridge, it was a brand new bridge, freshly made, and it was beautiful. And then my mom made a comment. She said, "Oh, this bridge was never here before. It was just a bunch of wood planks." And she went into a story about during the time when she was in the concentration camp, the American soldiers was dropping off bags of rice from helicopters, and for you to get some rice during that time was difficult. You had to go get that bag of rice from these American soldiers that was supplying these refugee camps, these concentration camps. So you will have to go get that bag of rice. And my mom was telling me how that there wasn't no concrete bridge. She would have to crawl, pretty much crawl through a plank of wood to get from one side of the river to the other side just to get a bag of rice to feed her family. And I guess I was kind of desensitized to her stories because I would get so many of it.
Mm-hmm.
But then being there in person and actually listening and trying to envision what she went through during that time, it's almost unfathomable. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I just made me realize, how hard she had it.
Yeah, and that was a very difficult time in hearing you talk about it now and when we first talked about it. And you also mentioned a prison that was a part of your family story as well that you saw when you were home.
Yeah, I will always hear stories about my grandma and my grandpa from my mom's side. Because my grandpa, he was taken by the Khmer Army because he was accused of being a communist. He was accused of being with the Khmer Rouge Army, or the regime, you can say. So he was taken to a prison, and my grandma would, go to that prison every day with food, and she would give that to the soldiers to give to my grandpa. I believe that was going on for like months. She would go there every day to bring food to my grandpa. And then one day the word was finally out that my grandpa was actually murdered by the army, by these soldiers, pretty much as soon as he got to the prison. He was already executed. So they were lying to my grandma saying that he was alive, and she was showing up every day with food for him. And little did she know that he was already dead. He was already murdered. And these soldiers kept going on with those lies for months. And it's kind of a heartbreaking story, but the love that she had for my grandpa is kind of inspirational tale as well, so
Mm-hmm.
it really goes based on how you really see things.
And when you saw both of those, the bridge and the prison, when you were back, was that a moment for your family to stop and reflect? Were there more stories? What was it like going and seeing those places for the first time on your trip back?
The bridge was kind of like, we was just out on driving, we was just driving, going to a beach, I believe, and we stumbled upon this bridge, and that was when my mom started talking about it. But the prison, my mom actually wanted to go see that prison. She actually asked for my cousin to take us there. So I think that was the prison. It meant a lot to my mom just because what my grandma was going through
Mm-hmm.
at that time, and the whole family was going through at that time, because it wasn't just my grandma, the whole family thought my grandpa was still alive.
Mm-hmm.
And they all had high hopes that he was still alive, but unfortunately he wasn't.
One of the things I'm really looking forward to seeing when I'm in Cambodia is Angkor Wat. I admit I wanted to see it because it looks like a stunning complex, and the architecture and the history of the site is amazing. But when you visited, it had a much deeper meaning for you and a much more spiritual connection that it sounded like you felt. Can you share a little bit about that? I'll see it and be in awe of the place itself, but it had a bit of a deeper meaning for you when you visited.
With Angkor Wat being one of the seven wonders of the world, is a magical place as it is to begin with. With our people, with me at least, it's one of those things where it's like, it's on my bucket list. I want to see it. Just like every other tourist, just like anybody else, you want to see a magnificent complex, like you said. But I never realized it until the trip there.
What was the journey like for you and your family getting to Angkor Wat?
The saying, it's not about the destination, it's the journey.
Right.
I think that's what's clicking in my head right now, because yes, Angkor Wat is magical. It's a special place, but what took us to get there was a journey on its own. And I'm thinking about how special it is at this moment. For us to get there, it's not close from my mom's village to get to Siem Reap. It was about a 3-day 3-day journey on a bus. So we rented out a tour bus, and we asked if any of the family members wanted to join, anybody in the village, that we actually had room for. It was a community bonding experience. It wasn't just us. It was people. It was my family friends from the village. We all jumped in a bus, rode about like 3 days. And back then, the roads weren't great, so it felt like we was off-roading most of the time. and the trip was rough. But one thing I remember, being real tired, and we was cramped in the bus, and my grandma was next to me, and I fell asleep on her shoulders. And I don't know how long I fell asleep. And my grandma, she was disabled. She had back problems, and she was in a fire to where burned off a lot of her side. So then she's not able to walk much. So with her letting me fall asleep, and now I'm thinking about it, it's like, man, it was probably painful for her, but she let me sleep on her shoulder the whole ride there. And I remember waking up, and I just looked up and see her smiling. And that was like moments like that made me realize how special that trip was.
What was it like when you finally arrived at the site?
Actually, that first step off that tour bus, and then stepping onto the first stone, we call it Bayon. As soon as we step on the first stone of Bayon, the entryway to Angkor Wat, man, it just felt like this immense energy. It just felt like, hey, you're here. A welcoming energy that's just saying you're meant to be here. This is your home. That's what I felt, at least, on my trip to Angkor Wat.
What was it like for your family visiting it? Some of them, I imagine it was their first time, and others had been there before. Was it one of those places that the elders in your family really wanted to show the younger generation?
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people that went, they never seen it their whole lives. It brings me back to, like, hey, you're in Chicago, you never seen a bean?
Right,
but,
right.
Yeah. But then, I understand that, because, when you're that close to it, like, you really don't think about it. But no, there was a few of my cousins that never been. A lot of people from that village have never been to either. Just to be able to experience, like, my first time with, and it's their first time, it just made it that special for everybody on that trip.
Meta, I want to thank you for sharing so much about Cambodia and your family's history there. I really look forward to going, and hopefully when I get back in April, you and I can reconnect and I can share some of my experience when I visited your home.
Oh, definitely.
Thanks for listening to this episode of My Home is Special. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you get future episodes automatically. Go to myhomeisspecial.com for the occasional email update too. That's where links to photo galleries and a few other surprises will live. Be sure to follow KBev Photo on Instagram for behind-the-scenes footage during our journey, and it'll be in the stories. If you just want the photos, go to kbevphoto.com. There's a lot else on there to explore. For now, this is Keith, aka KBev, signing off. Peace.